Hello.
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 They need like a Restream needs a
Countdown?
a transition button. So
Oh.
it's a little more fluid.
Bam. There you are.
Just bam. Bam. There we are.
All right. Happy Thursday, guys. Welcome to the family meeting. Come on in. Hello, Helen.
Let us know if you can't see or hear us.
Yeah.
All right. Let me make sure that. Yeah. Okay.
Hi, Elaine. Okay. Woo.
All right. Happy Thursday.
It is Thursday.
We've got some spicy fun. Thursday fun.
Yes. We should call this Petty Thursday. Yes.
Oh my goodness. So what's been going on with you?
Been busy.
Yeah.
I feel like it's just constantly go. Between school and a project we're working on and regular just office work stuff that is just going. I'm busy, but it's good.
Getting your hair done?
Yeah.
It's very fancy today.
It's very curly. I did pin curls last night and yeah, it was.
I love it.
It was more curly than I've never done pin curls. And so I was like, wow, this is extra curls. Okay. Okay. My favorite kind of Thursday. Yes. What's going on with you?
Yeah, busy. Today was admin day. So getting caught up on emails and everything. We recorded the last monthly partner video today with Thaddeus Williams. So if you're a monthly partner,
get ready for
an amazing conversation that we had with Thaddeus Williams today. It'll be coming out in November. You're not going to want to miss it. You're going to have a really nice time. And hey, if you've been enjoying our monthly partner series, or maybe you're thinking about being a monthly partner, but you're not really sure, one of the perks of being a monthly partner is that you get exclusive content. Monique and I have been doing a teaching series this year through the book of Ruth and through the book of Micah on justice. And so the cherry on the top to all of that was a conversation we did today with Thaddeus.
Yeah. So it was a really good conversation too. So how do we think about justice and biblical justice? He is the author of Not Creating Justice.
Confronting
injustice without compromising truth. And if you don't know, those are my arms on the cover of his book.
We all know,
but I have to mention it every time just so people don't forget.
Also, if you ever miss a family meeting, don't dismay.
Don't dismay.
It's on replay. Plus, it's on a podcast. So Bob helps us each and every week put it on audio so you can look for Center for Biblical Unity. And always make sure that you are signed up for our digital weekly newsletter. Just go to the website, wait 2 seconds, fill out the form. That way you will stay connected with us. Why should they take the 2 seconds to fill out the form?
Because if they don't wait the 2 seconds, they won't get the form.
But why should they fill out the form?
Oh, you should fill out the form because it keeps us in contact in case we're ever canceled on social media, number one. But two, it's an awesome recap for what has happened, what we've talked about during the week. If you're not on Instagram or Facebook, or if you don't frequent it, as much as you'd like, this is a one-stop shop and it comes right to you. We do all the heavy lifting for you.
Plus, only 2% of our followers see our posts on average. So there's chances are, even if you're following us, you're not seeing very much of our content. So staying engaged with us through the newsletter is the number one way that you can stay in touch with us, find out what's new, find out the news. And also, God forbid, we wake up one day, we're canceled off social media, you will still know where to find us. So go sign up for the newsletter.
Yep.
All right.
So let's get into what we're talking about today.
All right. So we've got a number of video clips that I selected.
Yes.
I'm going to have you comment on.
Not just me. We were both offer our commentary on these clips. But yeah, I think they were good. They're very interesting. It's very timely for a lot of the national conversation that we're having and a lot of the conversations we're having within the church.
So people seem to like it when we comment on things in the news. So we are going to do that.
I enjoyed that. It's at Monique's arms.
So this first one that we're going to be watching is,
you know, Petty Mo wants to just come out and say so much stuff right about this, but
about this clip. We haven't even watched it yet.
I know, but
right, well,
I mean, when you just look at, if you
let
just
Petty
look
Mo
at,
watch the clip.
You don't even have to look at the clip. Just look at the thumbnail for the clip. just look at just look at that
right here.
Yeah,
that's
a whole Petty Mo conversation all by itself.
Okay, but so Stacey Abrams is running for governor of Georgia, and she has a plan to help us with our inflation problem. You ready to hear the plan?
Let's do it.
All right, here we go.
I just asked you. You're running for governor of Georgia. I would assume, maybe incorrectly, but while abortion is an issue, it nowhere reaches the level of interest of voters in terms of the cost of gas, food, bread, milk, things like that. What could you do as governor to alleviate the concerns of Georgia voters about those livability, daily, hourly issues that they're confronted with?
But let's be clear. Having children is why you're worried about your price for gas. It's why you're concerned about how much food costs. For women, this is not a reductive issue. You can't divorce being forced to carry an unwanted pregnancy from the economic realities of having a child. And so it's important for us to have both and conversations. We don't have the luxury of reducing it or separating them out, but we also have to talk about what a governor can do. A governor can address housing prices. A governor can address the cost of education. A governor can put money into the pockets of everyday hardworking Georgians instead of giving tax cuts to the wealthy. That's what I talk about on the trail, and that's what's resonating. But let's not pretend that women, half the population, especially those of childbearing age, they understand that having a child is absolutely an economic issue. It is only politicians who see it as simply another cultural conversation. It is a real biological and economic imperative conversation that women need to have.
Ms. Abrams, this is Eddie Glotta.
So her plan for fixing inflation
is to have you kill your baby.
Pretty
basically what she's saying is that you can't, I mean, how dare you think that you should, we should talk about inflation or the way that, Americans are being robbed through inflation and all these higher prices and things like that. Instead of addressing that, instead of, truly looking at the real issues, well, you just kill your child because you can't be expected to actually, have a livable wage and a baby. Or on the flip side of that, you can't be expected to, I don't know, be chased.
We've lost the plot.
And
we've lost the plot. I don't.
So yeah, I don't really know what to say, but she's evil. Like, that's evil. It's demonic. And I'm not going to speak, directly to the condition of her soul, although I do think that the proof is in the pudding.
We could say these are demonic ideas.
Yeah, I don't want to go out and just call her demonic, but I do think that the proof is in the pudding.
So my friend Rusty, he boiled it down to a logical syllogism. I thought this was great. He says, in case you're unaware of how having abortions is one solution to the high cost of inflation. Premise one, having children.
Well, hold on. Sorry, because I wasn't finished.
Oh, okay. I thought you were done.
No,
sorry. Go ahead.
If you think that, I mean, here's the real issue is that I call it evil and wicked because she goes around to churches and she promotes this message of either you can afford to live or you can have your child. And she doesn't go around to white churches. I think she's as racist as they come because she goes around to Black churches and she promotes killing your child to Black people and then tells them that you cannot do anything else. And since you can't do anything else, since you are either too financially unstable or incapable, must be mentally incapable if you can't go out and get a better job or do something to uplift yourself out of the financial condition you're in, well, you must now kill your child. She's placating to people as if they're stupid. And that type of messaging is as racist as it comes. What she's done is she's taken the place of Margaret Sanger. She is the Black version of Margaret Sanger. She has her exact same messaging, except now where Margaret Sanger kind of went through the back door and got the pastors to kind of agree on it, and we're not going to call it, this Black genocide. Stacey Abrams just goes into the church and outright says, you need to be voting for abortion. You need to be killing your baby. This is not justice. How can justice go against the just decrees of God? Earlier today, Chris and I were talking with Thaddeus about Psalm 89 and how justice is the foundation of God's throne. If justice is the foundation of God's throne, how can we call murder just? What people do, and this is why it's wicked to go into the people of God and then offer them a version of God that is not God, and then lead them astray. And these pastors will be held accountable. Make no mistake about it. You let Stacey Abrams into your church and you allow her to promote abortion and to promote this party that is willing to kill your child. Make no mistake about it. If you are a pastor, you will be held accountable. That's all I got to say on it. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off. But we just had to finish that thought.
That's okay. Petty Mo. No, just go on woke preacher clips. He's got seemingly every day clips related to Stacey Abrams being platformed in Black churches. He had one up 2 days ago where a pastor at a AME church, I believe, was putting Stacey Abrams in the Hall of Faith, Hebrews 11 style Hall of Faith things. It's crazy, but yeah, just go on woke.
They will call good evil and evil good.
Yeah,
and this is the realm of thought that we are in as a society. This is part of what is creeping into the church. We're going to talk about a video later called where this one pastor talks about the great delusion and this deluding spirit. We need to understand that there is something happening within the church. Like culture, I say it all the time, culture is going to cult. And while I want culture and people outside of the church to understand the grace and mercy and the saving power of Jesus, can we in the church get an understanding of who God really is, about his holiness? You play with God's holiness when you open up the door to allow some demonic message into your church that says, well, go right ahead and kill your baby. I don't know. I didn't think I was fired up about it, but it's wicked. It is wicked. And I don't think that people understand that you just don't play with God. You just don't play with his holiness. That is wicked. It's wicked to sit down and to tell someone, well, because you're poor, you need to kill your baby. No one, what is the difference between like the time of lynching when it was like, well, you're Black, so you can be lynched. Well, you're a baby, so you can be killed.
Gloria says the pro-choice crowd makes children an accessory of the rich.
Oh.
And
y'all not here for it either. I see. Go ahead. Keep on coming.
Doug says, is this Christian nationalism? That's the question Woke Preacher Clips has been asking for a while. But he had a great clip yesterday, I think it was, and how they're already positioning it to get rid of Christian nationalism as a phrase, and they're recasting it as white Christian nationalism. So if Black and brown people have these people in their pulpits, that's not Christian nationalism.
Yeah. Hi, Auntie Linda. I was just about to say, Doug, you know Black people can't participate in Christian nationalism. Come on now. But yet I would be willing to argue that I suspect Black people have more governmental people in their pulpits and in their churches than many white churches do. At least that's the case out here. Every time I turn around, what's old auntie name? What's that girl name? The one with the bad wig. What's her name?
Maxine Waters.
Maxine Waters. Always in somebody's church. Always, let me hand you a check. And then they got to make it all nice and proper and hand you a check in front of the whole congregation so that everyone in the congregation knows that it's really me who's putting the food on the table. We call it a democratic plantation for a reason, because the masters let you know who feeds you. They come into the church and then they hand pastors little checks, turn around, and they be like, sliding you this money, sliding you this. It's demonic. It's wicked. The people of God are being bought. We are being bought, and who's doing the selling but the pastors? Y'all. When we talk about laying prostrate before the Lord and repenting and asking the Lord for mercy, y'all. Yeah. He said, of course, my bad, sister. I didn't want you to forget, Doug. I didn't want you to forget that, Black people can't participate in Christian nationalism. Even though in many Black churches, you still have, who is Black Jesus, Martin Luther King, and what was that, Kennedy? John F. Kennedy. Yeah.
Got their pictures?
Yeah, but it's not Christian nationalism. But, it's okay.
All right. You ready for the next one?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay. So we get a lot of questions. Nearly every outreach that we do and many live streams, people say, how do you stand against this ideology? How do you stand against the cultural push for the critical social theories into schools, or name the public place, into my school, into my kids' Christian school, into my church, into my small group? How do I stand? How do I stand? From now on, when people ask me this question, this is going to be my answer, is this video. All right, here we go.
It's hot.
Are you hot?
Yes.
Okay.
I feel like I'm running the risk of my hair going back. I can't be sweating.
White people don't know about hair going back.
They might. You don't know.
Yeah.
You can't just categorically classify everybody. Yeah.
They
don't know, it could happen in the middle of this family meeting.
All right. Hold on. We're going to watch this video.
And I just finished my freshman year at RHS. I've been a part of District 196 schools now for 10 years, and I'm going to give you a glimpse today of what's actually going on inside these schools. Despite the board's attempt to deny it, District 196 schools are quickly becoming a place where promoting activism is actually more important than promoting education. I'll take you back to my first day at RHS this fall. The principal came out and gave us a heartfelt speech about equality and standing together. He began to list countless races, such as Latino, Asian, expressing how much they matter and how important they are. But never once did he mention a race or identity that reflects me, or half the kids that were in the class. Now, members of the board, I know you haven't been to school in a while, and I know none of you, or most of you, don't have any kids left in the school district. But you must admit how uncomfortable it will be to be characterized just by your skin color on the first day of school, and be thought that you were wrong just because of your skin color. So I will never forget the look one of my friends gave me from across the room as we were sitting there listening to this blatant bias being expressed in the so-called equity statement by the leader of our school. To be clear, I don't need you to tell me that I matter, but hearing the condolences given to other races and leaving just one race out, inevitably you'll start to feel like you've done something wrong. And in our principal's attempt to unify us, he instead created unwarranted boundaries and barriers between his students, pitting us against each other based on characteristics that we can't control. In another separate instance, I was told that writing "All Lives Matter" on the whiteboard was political and could be seen as offensive. When I questioned the teacher after class, she told me that she didn't have an answer and she just had to erase it, and it was quickly erased. There are political signs all over RHS, about specific races that matter, specific sexual orientations that matter, and specific perspectives that matter. But when I questioned the RHS administration about how these signs were political, they told me that they were supporting human rights. So when I questioned why the equity statement couldn't represent all students, they told me that to even ask that question was outlandish and offensive. And when I asked why that was, they told me, quote, "Whites have a pretty good situation right now," unquote. So is that not racism? disregarding my question merely because of the color of my skin. To be honest, after enduring a year of the people in charge telling me that I'm a racist and I'm privileged and pointing out our irreversible differences, I've never noticed race more. And it's becoming the first thing I notice when I meet someone, which has never before been the case. RHS administration confidently told me that RHS students and staff are happy with their equity statement. But from my experience in talking with other students, this is not the case. I know many kids who disagree with their teachers, but they're too scared to stand up because they're worried that their grades will be docked and their learning experience will be affected. My honors government teacher, I'm not going to say his name, but he's mentioned that Democrats care more about all people while Republicans only care about themselves. And he's also inferred to us that socialism is better than democracy. He even had a statue. He had a statue of a socialist leader in his classroom. I've been told by a lot of kids that they just stay silent and adjust their schoolwork to reflect an acceptable opinion to secure a good grade. I've been approached by multiple teachers who have told me in private that they just want to say that they agree with me and they support me standing up, but they can't say it in front of the class for fear of being disciplined by the administration in some way or losing their jobs. There is clearly only one way to think in this district, and that is that they are teaching their kids to shut up if they don't agree. Now, members of the board, I want you to take a good look at yourselves in the mirror tonight and ask, are you really standing up for the equality of all people, or are you just pushing a damaging political ideology on our students? A fellow coworker at my job, who by the way is of color, discreetly told me that the schools seem to be pushing a very leftist agenda in class. This proved that not everyone is happy with your school, and not everyone who isn't happy is white. Now, due to all these instances I've mentioned and many more that I can't fit in this 5-minute speech, I've decided to leave this district and continue school on a private Christian school online.
Good for him.
Ooh-wee. That's how you do it.
Yeah, good for him. And good for him for being bold enough to, say something, to speak out and not just go along with the, I'm just going to put my head down and get along.
I think what really struck me about it is that he had specific examples.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what, I want to recommend to you. The reason I wanted to play the whole video was to give you kind of a picture of if you're going to speak out, like, here's some tips, make sure you have specifics. Make sure that you have some specific examples. So if you've been to a DEI training, like, have receipts, ask questions. He asked questions at strategic moments
Mm-hmm.
of people that were in authority. He asked clarifying questions, document that. And he also noted how people are afraid to stand up
Mm-hmm.
against it.
Yeah.
And that's what something you've been pointing out for a while is if people stay afraid, then, it's going to be a lot harder to push back.
Yeah.
We have to be willing to sacrifice or lose something. And you've often compared it to the civil rights era. Like, when people finally stood up, they had to be willing to lose something.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's just the risk that we're in, all the time. And, if it's worth standing for, we have to stand, and we have to know that, in standing, we run the risk of losing something, but is it worth it? And I personally say, yes, it is worth it. But
Yeah.
I
think it's just really important when people ask us, how do you stand up? What they often really are asking us is, how do I stand up and not make waves? Which I don't think is always possible.
Or how do I stand up and not lose friends?
Yeah.
I think that's it. Like, one of the things I was thinking about earlier this week is that people really, we need connection. We need people. And, being alone is definitely harder for some than it is for others, but we're not meant to be alone. And so I think part of that underlying question of, well, how do I stand comes from, yes, how do I stand and not make waves, especially because I need my job. My family needs a home. I need community. I need people. One of the first things that happened when I chose to stand was that my friend group left. And, and that was a whole new thing for me. Like, oh, okay, so where do I find community at now? That's the question I'm still asking. It's like, where do I find like true community that, I do life with? but it's hard. And so, I commend him for his bold move, but I think or his bold statement, but I think when we're looking at, how do I stand? I think we as Christians also have to be equipped to understand that if we're going to stand, we also need to be able to stand with one another so that we are reinforced when we choose to stand against culture. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think that when people ask us this question at outreaches, I kind of get the feeling that a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them don't want to have the hard conversation with the person in authority, or they just say, well, is it really worth it? We had a DM last week. She's like, well, here's all these red flags happening at my church, but do you think it's really worth it that I speak up? And I'm thinking, well, that's not my church. But if I were you, I'd want to speak up, but I'm not you, and you're the one that has to make that decision. There's no tactic that I can give you. There's no strategy I can give you that's going to not cost you anything, not be uncomfortable, not be difficult, not be time consuming. If you're going to make a stand, then decide to make a stand.
Yes. And, the question of, well, is it really worth it? I think goes down to Jeff Funk's point, that one right there. And something that I was thinking about, earlier this week again, says, if we hold to all 10 commandments, we see that any racism can't be acceptable. Thou shalt not covet. That point destroys much of this. I completely agree. I think that we don't consider enough. And actually, let me give you some context to where my thoughts came from. I'm reading this book. What's the name of that book? Reading While Black by
Esau
McCaulley. And a number of times he makes the statement to Black Christians. And this isn't, I didn't know we had that book in hard copy. Hold on, don't put that back. I've been reading that thing on my Kindle, trying to take notes. When we divide the body and we say, well, racism is a problem, I do think racism is an issue. I'm not just saying, white to Black, but racism is an issue because people are an issue. We are sinners. We tribalize. We hold to partiality. We participate in ways that are sinful. So to think that racism is never a problem within the body of Christ, I think is a little out there. Why wouldn't we think that we would have to deal with sin? Racism is a sin. It's a sin of partiality and hatred and things like that. But when we take the problems and then we say, well, this is a Black problem, and so let me just address the Blacks on this issue, or I'm just going to address the whites on that issue, especially with something like racism. I feel like we're missing Jesus's point in John 17 when he prays for our unity. I think we miss what it means to be a body. I think we miss the idea that when sin is impacting the church, the capital C church, and we only address well, we know that these people over here, they have their problems, but we just gonna talk to us. We miss the idea of how sin retards the body. We don't just talk about these things in little silos. And so when I see, can I go back to that comment about sin, racism isn't acceptable. It's not acceptable because we do hold to the 10 commandments, but the 10 commandments aren't, just written to a certain group of people. It's how we all participate in a transcultural principle of that is when we look into Ephesians 4. So we see in Ephesians 4 how Paul talks about, this is how you participate in the body. Why do we participate in the body this way? Well, let's look at all the ones. So he talks about the one baptism, the one Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. He gives us all of these ones to show now, is it too out there of a concept for you to also see that you are one? But yeah, I'm just with you. I'm with you, Jeff. I believe it's Jeff.
I want to point out Mike Davis's comment here. One of the things he's taught his daughters is to standing up for what you believe, for the truth sometimes means you will lose things, friends, position, money, opportunities, but it's always worth it, always. And I guess that's kind of how I'm flowing with this clip is, I get, to be honest, I get tired of the question because I kind of always get the feeling well, what's really behind the question is they want me to give them a strategy that isn't going to cost him anything. It isn't going to cost him any discomfort. And I can't do that. And so I always have this little internal battle inside myself when people ask us the question. But that's just what I liked about the clip. So
what's Andy talking? He said, God's word tells us that we will be persecuted. I think many Christians don't want to suffer loss or really suffer, period. And suffering, God teaches us way more than when things are going well. We should stand boldly, not because we are bold, but because you have to go to the other one, but because through Christ and him alone, we can be. Yes. Doug says, we also don't talk about sin. We don't talk about sin as ultimately disobedience and an affront to God. Yes. Yes. And not just racism. I think right now, racism is being highlighted in the church as being the most horrible sin on the planet. That, like, it was, some people say it is like the original, America's original sin. We have to talk about that before we can talk about anything else. Lecrae said we had to talk about sin before we talk about abortion, or we have to talk about systemic racism before we talk about abortion, the sin of systemic racism before we can talk about things like abortion. And, it's like, no, how about we talk about sin and the wickedness that is sin, and what sin does to us as humans, and how we can work to live in holiness and righteousness. But I'm right on with you that sin is ultimately disobedience and an affront to God, not just a specific sin, but sin all the way around.
Elaine saying that Jesus calls us his disciples to count the cost. Following Christ will cost you everything, even your own life, potentially. Luke 14:26. So,
yes.
All right. You ready for the next thing?
Let's do it.
All right. So this past week, there was a kind of a debate. They billed it as left versus right, like a showdown. It was sponsored by the Walkaway hashtag people. And Walkaway is a kind of a movement, if you will, of people who have left the Democratic Party. They're not necessarily all Republicans, but they feel like I was a Democrat and I'm no longer in alignment with those values. And so the Walkaway people had a debate of left versus right. And all the participants were Black, and they were talking about issues in the Black community. So that's kind of the setup. So I had a few clips. We'll see if we get through them all or not. But so let me go back here. So this first clip I thought would be good for us to talk about. Thanks, George.
Hey, George.
Catch us on the replay, or we're on the podcast. Just go wherever you stream your podcasts. Look for Center for Biblical Unity. Okay, so we're going to look at this first clip. It's looking at the question is critical race theory being taught in schools? Don't pay any attention to the chyron at the bottom third. There's a misspelling and the sentence makes no sense. But
just listen. Just listen.
Yeah. So, all right, I'm going to play the clip. I think it's this one.
All right.
Hold on. Okay, it's not that one. I think it's this one.
And if not, we'll just talk about it.
No, it's not that one. Hold on. Sorry. They all have the same title. So I'm trying to.
Is it the first one?
I think it might be this one. Yeah, it's this one. All right, here it is.
Right side, panelist one, you have 2 minutes.
Critical race theory, I think is actually the entire discussion of critical race theory is a distraction when we're talking about our education system. It's become popular. We know what made it become popular was that pamphlet that the Smithsonian, the National Museum of African American History, I probably got it wrong, when they released that pamphlet talking about assumptions of white culture. What were those assumptions of white culture? White people, not black people, white people were timely. White people respected authority. Donald Trump responded to that. He started criticizing that. That wasn't actually critical race theory. There was a version of what we call anti-racist training. Anti-racist training in our education system is the issue. If you look at charter schools, like I can't think of the Pickett Charter School in North Philly, they have an anti-racist training model where they're teaching their kids in order to frame discussions, whether it's literature or otherwise, to put themselves in the shoes of someone of color. Do our kids need that type of education? I say no. On the subject of critical race theory, I studied critical race theory in college. It wasn't in law school. I studied it in undergraduate school. I think it is one of many theories that are out there, such as post-structuralism, feminist theory. All of these things have their place in an academic setting. I don't believe that critical race theory, for the most part, is being taught in schools, but the anti-racist training, which means that a 5-year-old kid, these are things that are happening that I'm not making up, that kids have to sign anti-racist pledges. 7-year-old families have to sign anti-racist pledges. That is the issue, and I think that unfortunately, critical race theory has become kind of the boogeyman, but it's not the real issue. That anti-racist training, which is a subset of diversity, equity, and inclusion training, the facilitators of those type of programs are the problem, not necessarily the theory itself.
Okay.
I don't know that I disagree with him on that.
So just to recap, so he's on for the podcast. So he was, the speaker was on the quote unquote right side, not the left side. So he's on the conservative voices. There was
Three people on.
How do you say his name?
Delano Squires.
Delano Squires, who's a Christian.
Shamika. I don't know what
Shamika is. Michelle, I think is her name.
Michelle.
I don't know what her religious status is. And then this guy, who I'd never heard of. So his theory or his position was no, critical race theory is not being taught in the school, public schools. Critical race theory is merely an academic framework. The Smithsonian's graphic on whiteness is not part of critical race theory. It's part of anti-racism. Anti-racism flows out of diversity, equity, and inclusion, not critical race theory.
Okay, so
those are his summary of his premises.
I don't know that he wouldn't say that CRT, that DEI doesn't flow out of CRT. At least from my vantage point, I would say that DEI does flow, downstream from CRT. I think it has some of the same principles. Do I think that people are, learning critical race theory proper in 4th grade? No, I don't think that that's what parents should be worried about. I think it's the praxis, it's the walking out. On my personal page, if any of you follow me on Facebook, I posted an interview from from Richard Delgado and his wife, Jean Stefanchich. And they are part of the originators or original writers of critical race theory. They were present, at the formulating of critical race theory, and present for the think tank that became the movement. And when this interview was recorded in 2010, they both were, extremely excited. And they said, we're extremely excited to see how far critical race theory has made in the realm of education, that it is actually more in education today than it is in the legal realm. And that was in 2010. So to say that critical race theory is not in education, is not exactly correct, according to those who helped to found critical race theory. What I would say is that the proper theory, the theory in proper, like looking at interest convergence, looking at racism being endemic, looking at materialism, looking at some of these things that are part of the theory. I don't think that they're teaching a 6th grader these definitions and terms and, all of that. But what they are doing is that they're walking out the praxis of critical race theory, especially in the realm of education, sociology, and some of those things. And so I can see it as being, I don't want to call it a boogeyman, because I do think that there are things that parents should be concerned about in regards to education. But I do think that the way it's seen primarily is in anti-racism training and DEI.
So the question is at the top, in your view, is at the top is critical race theory, and then underneath that umbrella is diversity, equity, and inclusion, and then anti-racism. Or what he's suggesting is critical race theory is an other, and then over here we've got diversity, equity, and inclusion, and anti-racism under that. What say you?
I think that what we're not doing is looking at CRT proper and CRT praxis. CRT theory, CRT praxis. And so when you look at CRT theory, we're going to do a bunch of research. We're going to be looking at statistics. We're going to be, trying on a lot of different ideas and seeing how this could work in the general public and things like that. But it's going to remain one in academia, and it's going to remain pretty, I don't want to say nuanced, but it's gonna kind of have like a legal structure, a legal bubble to it.
I'm so confused by what your position is. Is your position, is that your understanding of his position?
No, his position is that there's CRT and then there's DEI and
Anti-racism.
anti-racism. Okay. What I'm saying is that I think that's a little off. I would say that there's CRT, and that takes two different streams.
Okay.
The two different streams would be the theory, and then the praxis, which is what we see a lot in our school systems, what we see in DEI trainings, what we see in anti-racism, the whole, be an ally and forming allyship in, the LGBTQ narrative, forming allyship as far as racial things go. But it all can go back to a line of critical theory.
All right, let me see if I've got it now. So when the accusation is made, they're teaching critical race theory in public schools. Your answer to that is technically they're not. They're not teaching Delgado and Stefanchich in public schools. So that's the academic side. It is in academia. But what they are teaching, you would say, is the outworking of it, of like, if I were to take these academic principles, then how do I live them out in my everyday life? Mm-hmm. That's the praxis.
It's the doing. Yes.
So when you hear in the news media, they're teaching critical race theory in public schools, the technical answer to that is no, they're not.
Unless they are teaching things like racism is embedded in, every piece of the American fabric. If they teach that racism will only, be ended when it's to the best interests of white people, then yes, they would be. Hold on one second. I want to make a practical comment. So
we're getting the book.
Yeah, because this is the original. This book was written by people who were there at the founding of CRT. And so when we look at
it, for the podcast, the book that you're getting is the Introduction to Critical Race Theory book.
Yes. So when we look at it, one of the first tenets is that racism is ordinary, not aberrational. It's a normal science. We can look at interest convergence. I feel like these are two of the most popular ones that, racism will end when it's to the best interest and the interests of Blacks and whites convene or they merge. That race is a social construction, which I actually do, believe and agree with. Trying to run through them.
So this is while you're looking, I'm just going to read a couple comments here. Mm-hmm. Mike Davis says he appreciates the differentiation you're making between critical race theory, the theory, and critical race theory, the praxis. That's a helpful distinction. Ken says, so the argument that critical race theory isn't being taught in schools is, I think, a logical fallacy. Using the framework of CRT is being done in schools. So using the framework, this is where we get DEI and anti-racist ideas flowing downstream as Monique pointed out, in the end, CRT is being taught via the framework, not the actual study. So,
Yes.
so this is a helpful conversation, and we should probably clip this so people understand that when people say, and even some conservatives say, well, you're just using critical race theories, the boogeyman. Nobody's teaching that in public schools. What they mean by that is they're not teaching from this book, the academic side of it. But what we're saying is they are teaching the principles which are derived from it, which we would say is diversity, equity, and inclusion, and things like anti-racism.
If you haven't picked up this book, I would, try and find it online. I think you can actually get it for free online, at least the text of it, because it actually has chapter 8 that talks about critical race theory today. Now, mind you, this is the third or fourth version of this. This is the third edition of this book. But let me see when it came out. This one came out in 2017. So this is the third edition of this book, but it talks about critical race theory today. And it's helpful because it looks at the movement. We have to remember that critical race theory is not just a theory. It is actually a movement. It is meant to move society. And that is based on the definition of those people who were actually there. I know Kimberly Crenshaw is the one who was coined as being the only sole originator of the movement, but that isn't actually true. So we have to think about it as a movement. How is it moving society today? That is the praxis part that I'm talking about. When we think about critical race theory as a theory, it's very much closer to critical legal studies than anything else. Which, is there something we could possibly, say, oh, this is interesting, I could study this a little bit more, we can talk about this. But to say I'm definitively, based on the theory, going to now move society, we need to ask some other questions.
Okay, Sharon's asking the name of the book. It is Critical Race Theory and Introduction by Dogano and Stefanchich, and it's available on Amazon. It's not a Christian book, but it is written by the founders of critical race theory.
Two of the founders.
Yeah. Thank you.
But so, it's helpful because it is it's older, number one, and it's not written by the people who are downstream a generation. No, it's written by those people who really sat in that room with Kimberly Crenshaw and Mari Matsuda, Derek Bell, and others to really craft this. If you follow me on Facebook, you can actually go to my page and see the interview that I posted by the authors of this book that is talking about how pleased they were with CRT being in the educational sphere.
Okay, that was good. All right, we have time for...
I'm just going to type I'm going to type the Richard Delgado. Okay. If you just look up Richard Delgado and critical race theory, this book, it's red and black, should pop up as one of your first options.
Okay, cool. Do we have time for one more clip?
Yeah, we do.
Do you want this one or
you can choose
the other one? All right, let's do the.
Let's do both of them. Go ahead.
It's a tough call.
Just choose one.
All right, we're gonna watch one more clip from the right versus left debate. This is from the walkaway event, and the first person you're going to hear from here is Delano. Is that how I say his name? Squires.
Delano. Mm-hmm.
Delano Squires, who is a very intelligent guy. I think he's with the Heritage Foundation and some other affiliations. So here we go.
The Marxist organization, it rejects the nuclear family. It said more about being trans affirming and queer affirming than it did about police brutality in its 13 original principles. And one of the things, I'll say this, I'm against abortion. I do not think that the manner of conception determines the value of a life. I'm a Christian. I believe that God created all human beings in his image, according to Genesis 1:27. I believe that we're fearfully and wonderfully made. I do not believe that black children should be killed in the womb, or any children for that matter. And I would like to know from and they can answer this question, do you all believe that abortion, which has a disproportionate effect on the black community, is an aspect of white supremacy? Yes or no?
Say the question again.
What?
Say the question again.
Ask that question one more time.
I wanted to know whether you all believe that abortion, which has a disproportionate effect, and let me be very clear with my terms, I'm talking about the intentional ending of a human life in the womb. I'm not talking ectopic pregnancy, I'm not talking miscarriage. Those things are handled in a different way medically. But do you all believe that abortion, which intentionally ends the life of a child in the womb who otherwise would have been born, which has a disproportionate effect on the black community, is one aspect of white supremacy?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna go with no. All right. Let me tell you what is an aspect of white supremacy in terms of a black woman, okay? A black woman has never had autonomy over her body in this country. She was used as a baby manufacturing machine for her slave owner, who needed more and more people. When they stopped allowing slaves to be brought over to the United States, it began then her turn to be impregnated every possible chance she got. Where do you think they got the word mother effer from? They used to put a paper bag over a black woman's head, and they would send in her relatives, whether it was her son, her uncle, her brother, her cousin. It didn't matter. They were just used as mules to recreate for white supremacy. So that's what happens when white supremacy is allowed. Black women have no control over their womb, their body, and anything else. And so what we're having now is people being returned the ability to decide what they want to do for themselves. First of all, the next question is, how are you telling me that black people are disproportionately having abortions when it's illegal to even collect that type of information at an abortion clinic? You are not allowed to collect whether a woman is black or white and whether how many abort. That's something that is, you don't even have to answer those type of questions at a clinic. You can choose to, but that is not mandatory. So even the information that you have is skewered. There is no fact in that. So that's issue number one. The facts are false. But two, we're getting back to the fact that maybe Black Lives Matter was co-opted. Maybe somebody infiltrated that organization and they made the goal of it to be LGBTQ and all this other stuff that had nothing to do with the original goal of black people standing up and trying to ask for humanity in this country. That's fine. The point still remains that a woman has the right to decide what she wants to do with her body, her life, and that is her choice.
Okay, I'm going to pause it there. If we
Thanks,
have time.
Andy. Sorry, Andy posted that book. Go ahead.
Okay, we'll see if we can go back to it. But first of all, I thought this was a really good clip because I remember when we talked to Sam Say, I think it was maybe 2 years ago, and I asked him that question on the podcast on all the things. Why is it that more people in the Black community are not fighting abortion? Like, why aren't there more pro-life Black people?
Mm-hmm.
And this was the exact answer he gave me, was that there's this thought among many Black women, and I'd be curious to hear your comments on it because I don't know if we've ever talked about it, but that women don't have autonomy over their body because of slavery.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is why so many Black women, like we watched the Stacey Abrams clip earlier, they feel like they must stand for abortion because of things that happened during slavery and not having control over their bodies.
Yeah. I definitely agree that that's part of the narrative. That and the fact that, I shouldn't have to have a child if I don't want one. That would, I'm not saying that's my position. I'm saying that that's, the narrative. But yes, there is this huge appeal to slavery. Doug said that he watched most of the debate and the constant appeal was back to slavery. I think that's a lot of the appeal for any part of the conversation, not just abortion, but a lot of the arguments for why, we are the way we are or choosing what we're choosing is because of slavery.
Perfect example. There was another question of what about all the violence, Black on Black violence in the inner cities? Goes back to slavery.
Yeah.
Nearly every issue had its tie to slavery, and the cure was reparations in several of the questions. So I also want to comment on Susanna's comment here real quick. And you're right, the baby is not the mother's body. That's the point on the pro-life. It's two different people. It's two different DNA. It's two distinct people. But this is part of the pro-abortion mantra of my body, my choice. Our rejoinder to that is no, actually, that's not your body.
Yeah.
So,
now, do I agree with her with what she was saying about slavery? Yes. Like, we can historically, like,
yeah.
It's just, it's there. Like, we have the information, we have the receipts, we have the receipts of history to say, yes, Black women were used in this way, that bodily autonomy was not necessarily a thing. Now, I'm not going to say for every slave woman. Could it have been across the board for every slave woman? Yes, but I don't, I think we also have proof that there were slave owners who did not treat their slaves in that regard as well. But as one of the rebuttals comes later is that, but we're talking about 2022 America, where the thought of you not having autonomy over your body is, I don't even know really the word for it. Like, we aren't living in that time where
this isn't the color purple.
What she said. This isn't the color purple where, mass is just going to come and, do me any kind of way. That isn't the time that we're living in. So we can't continue to use that excuse to be able to support a narrative that we should be able to kill our children. When they talk about the percentages, Delano talks about the percentages of Black abortion, and I don't think he actually looks at the hard numbers, but he alludes to it.
Disproportionate.
Yeah, Black birthing women, that age range is like something like 4% of the population. It's definitely no more, I would say, than like 4 to 5. I could, be willing to negotiate 6, but I don't actually know that it's that high. It's a very low number. And yet we represent something like 30 to 35% of all abortions from all women. Like, we run way high on the scale of abortion.
How does she know that you're not allowed to ask that question at an abortion?
That was going to be my question too when I first saw it. I was like, girl, how you know that they can? Maybe she's thinking about HIPAA laws.
I don't know.
She
was pretty quick with that.
But
data.
I mean, maybe that's give her the benefit of the doubt that, she's looking at HIPAA laws, but she does later on say, you can voluntarily give that information. So maybe people do voluntarily give that information.
Okay, final clip.
But yeah.
This was put up by our friend John Mason, who's a great voice to follow on Twitter, former guest on Off Code. And this is, I think this might be his pastor. I'm not sure, but this will be the last clip for today. So I'm going to put this up here. So Delano, or not Delano.
I think it's Delano.
Delano. This is John Mason, though, who posted this.
Now, here's what the deluding spirit does. Let me make it clear. This is definitely a demonic deluding spirit if a man believes he can become a woman. I'm saying that because that is the cultural norm today, and Christians are sitting back accepting this perverted foolishness. And I'm like, where's the outcry of the saints? We can picket for Black lives that matters. But what about Christ and his holiness? How is it that we can take up the mantra of cultural things, but when it comes to the holy thing, we sit back like we're scared? I'm like, wait a minute. Are you more Black than Christian? Are you more white than Christian? I mean, I said that before because for some people, that's the truth that they deny. Why don't I see Christians standing up for Jesus? Individuals are literally trying to destroy the image of God. What's what they say? You can become whatever you want to be. Oh, you can choose your gender. So now you took like 6,000 years of biology, and biology doesn't make sense anymore. You have to get rid of truth and accept a lie. The truth is XYXX chromosome. That's it. Nothing else. You can put it in the box of Fruit Loops and still come out the same thing. Doesn't matter the flavor of the rainbow you are. It doesn't matter how you feel. You can feel like a chicken or feel like a duck. You're still XX or XY. Here's the delusion. Our family members come and we love them, but they want us to accept their blatant immorality. So here's what they're telling you. Choose me or choose God. Oh, you didn't know. That's how Satan comes. And then because you love them more than you love God, you give in. No, that's that deluding spirit.
Yep. Are you more black than Christian? Are you more white than Christian? And yeah, I wanted to leave on that one because
just a call to courage.
A call to courage and a call to understand that the war that we're fighting is not just physical. We are in a spiritual war. It's a spiritual battle. And if we're in a spiritual battle, we also have to realize that we do have real spiritual opponents. And I just thought that he hit it, right nail on the head.
So it's North Dallas Baptist Church is where that was posted. If people want to go look up the whole sermon. Final comment here from our friend Mike Davis. The argument that Black women didn't have autonomy over their bodies as a justification for abortion doesn't work. That would be like me saying, well, Black men don't have autonomy over their bodies. We were forced to do things we didn't want to do. Therefore, as a Black man, I should not be forced to take care of my kids if I don't want to, because that is making me do things I don't want to do, just like slavery. That's a non sequitur. One does not follow the other or justify the other.
But I don't think it's too far-fetched from part of the arguments that they're making, the idea that we see the Black violence, Black on Black violence and things like that, that it's directly linked back to slavery, that what we've known is violence. And so now, we participate in violence. I think that argument may not be too far, too far off. What is the pastor's name? I think it's Taryn. Deems or Deams is the last name. You can, if you look on my Twitter, I retweeted it, so it's there too.
But look at North Dallas Baptist.
I don't know if it's Baptist Church. I thought it was North Dallas. Is it congregational?
Oh, I don't know.
But go to my Twitter. And I think Keita follows me. I'm pretty sure. So, but his name is Dr. Taryn Deems, Terren. And then I'm just not sure on the spelling of his last name, Dea or Dee.
Okay.
But yes. All right.
Well, that's what we have for you today, folks.
We will see you next week if the Lord says the same. Yeah. Thank you so much for being with us. Talk to you later.
Bye.